Okay, our guest speaker tonight is me. It's actually been a year and a half since I gave a talk here. And to be honest, what prompted me to do this is that a couple of key changes have been going on. One is I've been seeing a lot of experts in customer success come out with some new ways of doing incentive compensation for CSMs and really applying hunter, salesperson, quote and commission plans for people who are in blended roles. And I think that is a real problem. I think that's a real bad thing to do. The other thing is that over the last 6-7 months, I've actually picked up another job. I'm not only working with our client success team, but I've also picked up marketing. So we have a lot of marketing technology providers that come in, and I'm working on a daily basis with CSMs who are providing technology and services and things like that. So I'm in a very odd situation where literally I'll be on the phone having a meeting with a CSM. I get off the phone and then I'm talking to our own CSMs about how to do things. So this whole issue of incentive compensation and behavior is something that has been really interesting to see really firsthand as a customer and then also as a provider of this stuff. So I've gone through a bit of a personal journey on thinking about this whole issue of incentive compensation. And in the past I thought, account manager kind of 80-20 base plus variable, it all works out, it's all good. But we're actually, and kind of coincidentally, IntelliSecure is taking another look at this right now. Over the last couple of weeks, this has popped up again. So this whole issue about how do you pay people, what is motivating, what really works, is an ongoing debate. So what I wanted to do was to share my own personal journey on this, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to share tonight can be very controversial, because what I'm going to go and do tonight is really look at some fundamental flaws and some basic science around human motivation and about how systems work. And if we don't think about that, my concern is that we're going to keep making some really bad decisions about this. So some of you, when you hear my talk tonight, are going to say, yeah, whatever, we like what we're doing, course and speed, it ain't broke, so don't fix it, kind of a thing. And I say, God bless you, go do it, right? I'm not here to tell you how to run your business or what to do or what's right or what's wrong. Some of you will see some things tonight where you say, wow, that's really interesting, I never thought about it that way. I need to kind of rethink what we're doing. Maybe there is a different approach we need to think about. And for you, I would say let's keep the dialogue going, because I do not have this all figured out, to be honest with you. What I do, and a lot of you who know me, I really go back to the basics, the fundamentals, the science. What do we really know about all this stuff? Let's dig down deep and really understand what's going on. So that's what really tonight is all about. And so I'm on a personal journey. I want to share that journey with all of you, and I want to show you some things that might make you say, huh, I never thought about that. So a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me, I've been in business a long time, lots of gray hair, done a lot of different stuff, worked in a lot of different industries, large and small companies, 4 startups. I've done a lot of consulting, both internal and external over the years. And my real sweet spot is continuous improvement in analytics, and really big into neuroscience. How does the brain work? And that interface between business and, at the end of the day, we're working with people, right? And people do some weird things. And why do people do some weird things? And we all do weird things. And really peeling that and understanding how does that work is something that fascinates me. How do we apply more psychology to what we do? So that's a little bit about me. What I want to talk about tonight are what I see as 3 fundamental flaws in the whole compensation approach, not only for customer success, but for every organization that uses compensation. There are some basic mathematical, cognitive, as well as strategic flaws in how most of these systems work. And they're things that are very subtle but very important that all of us miss. And so we're going to demonstrate some of that. What I'd like to do is have 3 volunteers come up. We're going to do a little simulation. I need 3 volunteers who are good sports, because this is going to get interesting. So 3 people who would like to come up and join me up here. Why don't you come up, Jason? There's one. And who else? Jordan? And I need a third person.
Bonnie.
Bonnie, you want to come up? Okay, so we have Jason, Jordan, and Bonnie. Okay, so introduce yourself. What do you do?
My name is Jason. I'm the team lead at Camp Minder. We're a software company for summer camps all around the world, and more than just summer camps.
Awesome. Welcome. Bonnie?
My career is a little like Ed's. I'm a customer success consultant. I need to be able to say that out loud. But I've done a lot of industries, a lot of other things, but that's what I do now, and have been for the last several years.
Okay, Jordan.
Hi, Jordan Oliver, Director of Customer Success at Swim Lane.
Okay, thank you all for coming up here. You're good sports. You all work for me now. And we're at a company called Acme Software, and this is the CEO, Wile E. Coyote. Okay? So I want to tell you a little about your new jobs here. You are customer success managers. A little bit about the company. We do world-class processes. We have the best of the best customer success processes. We've copied the absolute best practices around the industry. We're working with top consultants. Our CSM practices are top-notch. Our goal here at this company is zero churn. That's our target. That's what we're going for. We're going to hold people accountable for zero churn. We believe we can do it because our processes are so good. The other thing is that we are data-driven. We believe in the numbers, objective science. The numbers tell the story. We're heavily analytical, and everything we do is really shown in the numbers. The last is that we believe very strongly in pay-for-performance systems. So we believe in meritocracy. If people perform, we want to reward and recognize them. For people who don't, it is what it is, right? So this is what our culture is all about. So welcome aboard. Great to have all of you. So we're going to bring you on board as customer success managers. Each one of you have 100 customers. And part of your job responsibilities is you are responsible for doing renewals. So they come up, and there are 4 quarters in the year, and each one of you will be renewing 25 customers a year. Now, the process of renewing a customer is this. This is world-class stuff. This is how we renew a customer. These are 25 customers. The white beads are customers who renew. The red beads are customers who cancel. Okay? So here's your process of, again, this is world class. Here's your process of renewing a customer. Watch carefully because you will be tested on this. So what you do is you put your paddle in here, you scoop in there, you pull it out. You've got to make sure you have a bead in each one of these holes. If you have excess, you just kind of roll that out. If you don't have enough, you just go into the stack again and you get your bead. And what you do is you report the number of churns that you have. There's 2 red beads, so there's 2 churns there. Okay? And what we'll be doing is recording your performance because we are data-driven and we're paid for performance. With that, I will say we do pay a cash bonus. So for any of you who get 0 churns in a quarter, you will get $20. So I will reward you with $20. Any questions about that?
Is that real money?
That's
Real money. So $20 for anybody who does that. Now, process-wise, you have to follow exactly what I showed you. None of this stuff. None of this. None of this.
I was looking at
None of that. There's none of this. You go into the scoop. You pull it out, and then you wipe off the act. Oops, I lost one. So you go in, again, so you fill them all up, and then you report the number of churns that you have. And we're going to keep track. Are we clear about that? We're going to take turns about that. Now, as you do this, you're all new. I get it. And there's a learning curve here. And we're going to be doing some coaching as we go so that, make sure we improve your performance. And again, nice bonus program. We do pay for performance. So, Jason, you want to get started?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is your first quarter. Your first quarter, 25 customers. Okay, what do we got?
2.
Ooh, 2 churns. Okay. So Jason's got 2 churns in quarter 1. Okay, not bad, not bad. Okay, next, Bonnie.
It's because you're new.
Yeah, I know.
It's all through me and Bonnie and
Whoa.
Stop it!
Wow.
careful what you ask.
6 churns.
On the job.
Got a lot too. Yeah. So
How many
that's
you got?
5.
You got 5. Okay. All right, guys.
All right, Jason,
once
you don't
again,
look too bad.
once again, you're all new. I get it. Welcome aboard. And we've gone through a quarter here. I've seen your technique. It's good. However, you're not hitting the goal. Again, the goal is 0 churn. We pay a big bonus. It's $20. $20 in your pocket if you can go through and have no churns in a quarter. Okay, does that make sense? Want to try again, Jason?
Those are the only rules.
You have to follow the process exactly as I should. Exactly as I should.
Absolutely.
All right. Uh-oh.
5.
5.
Oh, wait, no. Actually, I missed one. Sorry, I got to go again.
Okay, go ahead.
Those were the rules. Those were the rules.
They're going through the extras.
Sorry, this one.
5 again.
Jason, I don't know what the heck. What the heck? Look at this.
been a bad
Your
quarter.
performance.
Yeah.
Your performance got worse. I mean, I get it. You're coming on board, but what happened? What happened?
The Niners aren't doing well.
How many?
3.
3. Bonnie.
Cut mine in half.
There we
See,
go.
you should pay attention to what Bonnie's doing.
Cut mine in half.
And half her churn. Good job, honey. Good job. Still not paying any bonuses here, though.
Yeah, 4.
4. Okay. Incremental improvement. A little bit better. Not bad. Not bad. Okay. So what are we seeing here? Bonnie definitely getting better. She's over the learning curve. She's performing. Jordan a little bit better. Jason, I don't know about you, man.
Hot start.
We might have to put you on a performance improvement. I'm concerned right now. Okay. I still haven't paid my bonus. So keep that in mind. Okay. Third quarter. Go ahead. Let's see what you got.
Missed 2. 4.
4. Okay. All right. All right. Well, that coaching did help a little bit.
There we go.
I like the trend here. I like the
Like the
trend.
trend.
Still a ways to go.
Kind of scary every time.
2.
Dude, Bonnie's killing it. Look at that. She's just trending the right direction. Good job, Bonnie. Still haven't paid a bonus. Come on.
Going for 3.
That's bad.
You're done.
My coaching's not helping. Clearly, our bonus system isn't working either. I mean, Bonnie is certainly, she's motivated. She's
Trying.
doing it, right? She's doing great. This, what am I supposed to think, Jason?
I'm setting a lower
All
bar.
right. Now we're going into fourth quarter.
Fourth
Let's see
quarter.
what you can
The
do.
most important quarter.
Most important. Let's close up the year here.
That's right. 1.
Hey, you're a strong finisher. Good job. That's awesome. Still no bonus.
No bonus. That's all right.
No bonus.
Firing.
Okay.
3.
3. Okay, well, okay, you're fairly consistent.
Try
Not
the left
bad. I mean,
You're
Anything, right?
consistently bad.
I'm going to try the left side of this bucket here. Close my eyes. Just smear fingers.
Cross your fingers.
No, didn't work. All right, we got 5. Consistently
Holy
4.
cow. So you have 100. You have 100 customers that you renewed. So we've got 7 and 5. So this is 12. So this is 12%, right? And then Jordan, this is 9, and 7 is 16, and 5 is 21%. Wow, that's a high churn rate. And then Bonnie has 9, 10, 11, and 14%. Wow. Well, no one anywhere near 0%, right? We were going for no churns, not anywhere close. Didn't pay a bonus. I still got $20 in my wallet.
Look at all the money we saved. You.
Well, guys, I hate to say this, but I have some very bad news. We went through the whole year here. Our churn sucks. Our VC firm looked at this and they said, you know what, you guys aren't making it. We're going to not fund the next round. We have to go through some serious layoffs. And unfortunately, the whole department was eliminated. My job is gone. Your jobs are gone. I appreciate all the good work you did, but it is what it is. Let's give them a big hand. Okay. What did you see here? What did you see?
Random.
It was what do you mean it was random? They did exactly the same thing. They used the same equipment, same tools. Look at the results. I mean, clearly this has to do with people.
The incentive plans.
Some are better than others.
I think the coaching was inadequate.
Terrible leadership.
Yeah, what else is happening?
I couldn't.
The incentives didn't drive performance
Didn't drive performance. Why?
because it wasn't even related.
It wasn't related at all.
I think the process wasn't, you couldn't change the process. If we could have just picked it up, we would have.
What's this process stuff? You all did the same job. We hired you to do a job. What's up with that? Go ahead.
I couldn't influence the outcome.
Couldn't influence the outcome. Interesting. Other stuff. Does this at all feel or look familiar? Have you ever seen something like this before? Where have you seen this? Like everywhere?
Yeah.
Everywhere? There's a couple of very key lessons. This is actually the famous Deming red bead experiment. This has been around for many years, just applied to customer success. W. Edwards Deming is a huge quality guru, led the quality transformation in the world, revered among quality professionals in manufacturing and service for many, many years. But there's some fundamental lessons in all of this that I want to explore a little bit more, because these are underpinnings of all compensation systems. The first is that the numbers are misleading, and we're going to talk about that. Because we do this all the time, don't we? We look at our data, we look at people, we rate and rank them according to the numbers. But in complex systems, this is very misleading. We'll talk about that. We automatically assume people are the cause. We point fingers. We say, so-and-so is a good performer, so-and-so is a bad performer. We automatically assume it's about the people and not about the system or the process. Right? The other is that pay-for-performance systems are based, actually, at the end of the day, more on chance than they are on individual performance. There is a systematic flaw here, is that people look at these systems and immediately think it's because of an individual's contribution. That is not always the case, as you see here. It had nothing to do with that. Very artificial. Now, let me go through a little exercise here. So we have a lot of data on here, and one of the things that I want to do is I want to look at this data in a different way. Okay? So this is probably very familiar. We keep track of what our individuals do and their performance over time, but we're going to look at this differently. I'm going to do a histogram. Everybody know what a histogram is? Heard about that before? So what does a histogram show? Distribution, frequency, probability, right? So as we look at this list of numbers here, can you see that okay? How many zeros did we get? No zeros. How many ones did we get? One. We got 1 1. So I'm going to mark that over here. So we got 1 1 over here. How many 2s did we get?
2.
2 2s. That's a 2 up here. Okay. How many 3s? 2? 2 3s? How many 4s did we get?
2 4s.
4?
2.
2. 2 4s. How many 5s?
3.
3 5s. So I'll put one more. How many 6s?
1.
1 6. There it is. Right. 1 6 down here. How many 7s? I didn't even think we'd have a 7. Wow. Okay, what does that look like? What does that look like?
Starting to look normal.
Yeah. It's a little hard to see. That's actually turned out pretty well. Most times they don't on such a small number of samples. If we repeat the experiment 30 times, do a lot of these samples, and I did, pretty clear, standard normal. What do we know about the standard normal? You see this all the time, right? You saw it in science class and things like that. This has some very unique properties. The standard normal shows up everywhere. Why is that? Any ideas? Why is there randomness? Actually, it has to do with physics. It's quantum mechanics. There's randomness everywhere in the universe. Every physical system, every biological system, every social system, every economic system, every political system, all systems have variation. And over and over and over again, this pops up, the standard normal. And this has some very unique properties. What it says is, I don't know what the next result's going to be, but I can predict probabilistically where it would fall. So in the standard normal, about 2 out of every 3 data points will fall within 1 standard deviation of the mean. 95 out of 100 will fall within 2, and 99 out of 100 within 3. So this is very, very predictable. I don't know exactly where it will be, but I can tell you where it's likely to be, right? Now, the other interesting thing about the standard normal is that what you have been doing is predictive of what you are going to be doing. So if I don't change my system, whatever it is, the system is what it is, and it's stable and keeps operating, I can predict what it's going to do next. If I don't change anything or improve anything in my system, it's going to keep doing what it's doing. If you always do what you always did, what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, right? That's what this tells you. So unless you change what you're doing, you're going to see this over and over and over again, and anything you see is just randomness. Does that make sense? This is one example. This is just random stuff. Now, why is this shape happen? What happens? And I don't want to go too deep in the math, but this is something called the standard, or the central limit theorem. This is what defines, this is what tells this is the secret of the universe when it comes to randomness. And what's really important here is it says this shape, this standard normal shape, comes anytime you have independent and identically distributed variables. So if you have multiple independent variables, adding together and subtracting within a complex system, you will see this shape. You will see the standard normal. It will always be there. You will see this everywhere. If you run your churn statistics and you do this experiment, you're going to see this. If you look at your revenue growth statistics, you'll see this again. This is over and over and over, you will see this. And what this means is that it's more than one factor. It's not just the people. By definition, there's more than one factor happening here. It's more than the people. Now, what is really causing this? What's causing this variation? Any thoughts? Why do we see this variation in here? Variation in where the beads are in the bowl. Variation in how you went through and scooped this up. Your hand motion, things like that. All totally random stuff drives this performance. It's not just one factor, it's multiple factors. And in this case, it's actually something called sampling error, which is the most dominant piece of this. But all these things are independent factors. So by definition, whenever you see this, there's more than one story. There's more than one cause. Yet in this experiment, we assumed it was the people, didn't we? So in every system, people are certainly part of it, but there's a lot of other stuff happening. What this means is that anytime you look at numbers, behavior of a complex system, these numbers are what statisticians call confounded, meaning that the numbers are all added together. If I look at Jason's performance here at 12%, it's not just him, it's Jason plus all these other random factors. You cannot pull these other factors out of it. It's blended into the numbers. So things like sampling error and randomness in the location of the beads, all those other kinds of things are already in this number. Just because we sort it by people doesn't tell us anything about the people. This is this person plus all those factors, this person plus all those factors, this person plus all those factors. How many times when we go through this exercise do we jump to the conclusion this is that person's performance because of the numbers? We do this all the time. We forget about all the other factors in this complex system. Does that make sense? Why do we do that? Why do we jump to conclusions that this is always about people? Any thoughts about that?
Because it's easy. It's the most, yeah.
It's intuitive. Here's another really interesting thing. Oh, by the way, before I get to that, if you really want to pull out the individual contributions of the people in here, you have to use very complex statistics. You cannot do it this way. You cannot pull out Jason's unique contribution or Jordan's or Bonnie's from these numbers. You have to use more advanced numbers. Now, here's the really cool thing. I told you I'm into neuroscience. It turns out we have a bias, every single one of us. It's something called fundamental attribution errors. Whenever we hear about something, we immediately jump to the conclusion somebody must be to blame for that, right? Or someone must be praised for that. Any kind of situation that happens, who do we go after? We immediately personalize that. How many of you feel like you do that? Right? I mean, you hear a report on the news about criminal activity, and you hear about a suspect, and immediately think they're guilty. And they always say, well, we got to go through the investigation. We're jumping to conclusions. We are all doing that. We all are actually naturally hardwired to do that. In these studies, this upper grouping up here shows the circuitry in our brains that allow us to imagine what someone else is thinking or feeling. This is a basic skill. This is why we're so successful as a species. Because we can understand, we can work with other people. We're the best collaborators on the planet, which makes us the apex predators. And that skill is these particular circuits within the brain. That's mentalizing. We come equipped with that. We've evolved that over millions of years. What's really cool is a subset of those areas are responsible for this fundamental attribution error. These subset of these regions are always on, and always just under our consciousness. So anytime we have a situation like this, we automatically leap to the conclusion, Jason's our best performer, Jordan's our worst performer, right? Because we personalize this. We forget about the fact that these numbers, anytime we look at these numbers, it's not just them, it's them plus a lot of other random stuff. So all of our pay-for-performance compensation systems are based upon an illusion. Right? Fundamentally, this is an illusion. And we jump to the wrong conclusions. So we need to think differently about all of this. Now, the one thing we haven't talked about yet is this bowl, these red beads. These red beads represent churn, right? So let's bring this back to our own experience. Why are these red beads here to begin with? That's the question. What put the red beads in here? If we want to change the performance of our system, we've got to get rid of the red beads. We've got to get the churn out of the system. So in your experience, what causes churn? What are the churn causes?
Selling to the wrong customer to begin with.
What's that?
Selling to the wrong customer to begin with.
Wrong customer. What's another cause?
Or expectation setting.
Bad expectations.
Who said that?
Oh, did you? Loss of the champion that advocated for it in the first place.
What else?
Business closes.
What's that?
The business closes.
Business out of business. Happens a lot.
You might say lack of product development if you're not investing in your product.
Product issues. What else?
Mergers and acquisitions.
M&A. What else?
Customer not seeing value.
Break that down. What do you mean by value?
They expected something that they didn't get, so maybe
Okay.
that's bad expectations.
Okay. Or maybe it was, it didn't, what about
The
value?
ROI.
ROI. Okay. ROI was not
Missed
there?
ROI,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. Anything else?
Bad experience
Bad experience. What kind of experience?
with your CSM support.
With support. Okay. What else?
Price. Competitor comes in.
Pricing wrong. Okay.
Sales overselling.
Overselling.
That never happens.
Never happened. Okay. Anything else?
Say lack of follow-up.
Lack of follow-up.
Revisiting after the sale.
You get the idea. There's a ton of things here, and these are all independent, aren't they? They're all independent. They have nothing to. Well, tell me which one has to do with CSMs. Wrong customer? No. Bad experience with support. That's kind of a support thing, right? Bad expectations? Maybe. Pricing? Anything to do with CSMs? Bad onboarding? Yes. Right. Here's one. Overselling? No. Loss of champion? That's a customer issue, right? You don't control that. Lack of follow-up? Maybe.
Yeah.
Out of business? Absolutely not. Product issues? Blame the product person. M&A? Out of your control. ROI not there? Another product issue, right? Look at all these factors that have absolutely nothing to do with CSMs. So, let's go back to this idea about math. I hate to do more math here, but this is really important. Let's say that we call, this is a variable, this is an independent variable, we'll call this x1, we'll call it x2, we'll call this x3, and so on. And all these have different weightings, don't they? Some are more stronger than others, and it depends upon your business. So we'll put a beta 1 here as a constant, or weighting factor, beta 2, beta 3, okay, and so on. All of these are factors. And if I can identify all my factors, I can predict what the outcomes are. This is the whole basis for predictive analytics. You've all heard that before, right? This is all statistics. It's all just stuff that you can get to, but it's all about laws of probability. And we've already demonstrated that CSM is a minor player in all of this. And what are we doing? We're doing pay for performance on factors that are out of the control of a lot of CSMs. Are you guys feeling me here? Is this making sense? You see where we're going here? Now, we're going to shift gears a little bit. What are the goals in customer success? At the end of the day, what are we trying to do?
Retain customers.
And?
Provide a good experience.
Well,
Great advocates.
What's the CFO looking at?
Revenue.
Revenue.
Revenue, right?
Valuation.
It's churn and revenue.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're, hey, what have you done for me? You know, it's all about profit and loss, dollars and cents. What are the strategies that we use? How do we get that? How do we do this? Well, let me assert to you there's three. I've seen them bucket into three different groups. One is to be really reactive, right? The customer is going to quit. We've gotten notice from them. Get on the phone right away and try to talk them out of it. That's being reactive, right? Then there's also being proactive, which we all want to do. We all want to get in front of that. We all want to have a good onboarding experience. We want to measure customer health. We want to do our quarterly reviews. We want to provide a great service. And at the end of the day, we're going to influence them to stay, right? Being proactive, get out in front of it. The last one is to be preventative, which is to have such great processes, fix all this other stuff, right? Product, pricing, expectations, selling to the wrong customer, going after all the other stuff, right? Customer success plays a role in all of these, don't we? Does that make sense? I mean, how many of you are doing all of this to some level? You all are, right? So what does this mean for our compensation systems? What do we want to incentivize? What do we want to see? What behaviors do we want to see in CSMs? Let me give you a list. See if you agree with this. Is this a list you really want? You want them engaged. There was a study that said like 80% of employees are not engaged at work. We want them engaged. Persistent. Yeah, stick with it. Don't quit. Curious. Yeah. Proactive. We have that on the list. Creative. Problem solvers. Flexible. Team players. Happy. Acting with integrity. Sustained performance. Pretty good list, right? Here's a shocker. A huge shocker. All of these are undermined by pay-for-performance systems. Every single one of them. And there's strong scientific evidence that says that. Who says that? These guys. I don't know if you've heard of Ryan and DC. These guys have been studying something called self-determination theory for about 40 years. Hundreds of controlled scientific experiments replicated, a lot of different domains, a lot of different places. They've looked at this whole issue of human motivation. And they say that there's a couple things that we all respond to, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is you do something because you're interested in it and you like it. I like to ride my bike. My wife likes to play tennis, right? You do what you like. That's intrinsic motivation. You do it because you like it, because you personally get something from it. Extrinsic motivation is you do something to get something. We all work to get a paycheck. It's a separable, contingent reward that we get for what we do. What they say is all of us are motivated by both to a greater or lesser degree. But what happens is that extrinsic rewards actually make you less interested in doing what you would otherwise be interested in. If you take away the reward, you take away the behavior. It alters how people behave. If you're internally driven, you do something you're curious about, you're interested in, you stick with it, you do it because you like it. You're more engaged in it, you love what you do, you show up for work, you don't have to worry about getting a reward for doing that. You already have the reward. The other thing is that they talk about for self-determination is what makes people truly happy in life. And they said over and over and over in these studies, and you hear about these from time to time, is what you suspect. It's not about more money. It's not about a bigger car. It's not about a bigger house. It's not about all those external things. It's about what's inside yourself. It's that intrinsic reward that ultimately makes people happier. And they say there's three things: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Autonomy, do you have choice? Do you have the power to choose? The second is competence. Are you getting better? Are you learning a skill? Are you learning more? Are you having an effect on the world? Are you getting feedback that you're having an effect on the world? Are you making a difference? And the last one is our relationships. At the end of the day, these are the things that people engage in, they stick with, they love to do. This is what really drives human motivation at the end of the day. Now, they talk about something called perceived locus of causality. How many of you have heard of Stephen Covey? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I like how he describes it. In his book, in the 7 Habits, he talks about 2 circles. He talks about the circle of concern and the circle of influence. Case in point, global warming. Look at what's happening in New York this week. We're all concerned about whether or not we're going to have a habitable planet in a generation, right? But that's a huge, complex, multifaceted problem none of us in this room is going to solve. But what can we do about it? Well, we can buy more fuel-efficient cars. We can take public transportation. We can vote. We can protest. We can do a number of things. We can eat less meat, which actually drives the climate. So there are things that we can do. And one thing Covey talks about is don't worry about all these things. Be concerned about them, but don't fixate on them. Always focus on what you can influence. Bring it back to what can I do. Take that choice and mastery, the choice and the competence, and do something with it, because you'll be happier. If you're focused on this and you're not doing anything about it, you're just going to drive yourself nuts, right? Now, one of the things I want to point out, the difference between salespeople and customer success. If you really look at how salespeople work, their circle of influence is actually pretty large. If you think about their objective, especially hunters out there looking for stuff, if you have a good product and a strong market, you can make a number. You can. You just got to hustle. You can get there. Because you're managing the whole process front to back. And as we all know, it's easier to make promises than it is to keep them. Right? Seriously. So they have a pretty good sized circle of influence. They can determine those outcomes, those sales outcomes, much better than CSMs, who are probably down here. Why? Because of this. Look at this. All these other factors come into play once you've been working with that customer for a while. It's a much tougher job to do. So I ask you, why is it that we're putting the same incentive plans for people who have less influence on it? Why are we doing that? So if we go back to the psychology, what they say, pay for performance does in fact work. If you have a large circle of influence, you're doing simple repetitive tasks. I sold for a number of years at HP. I can tell you it's pretty simple, especially if you're doing transactional sales. It's a 7-step process. It's very repeatable. If you see a lot of opportunities, you bang through the process, you work through it. It's not that hard, to be honest with you. Compared to what you guys are doing, it's very easy. Short-term gains, right? What have you done for me lately? If you want to really get those short-term gains in, you do pay for performance. Volume is more important than quality, and there are safeguards against unintended consequences, that you don't get the Enrons and you don't get the Wells Fargos and those other organizations, because as soon as you have a system, what do they try to do? They try to manipulate the system, right? Try to figure out, how do I cheat this thing? How do I make more money? It alters their behavior. this actually does work for sales, and it's a very good fit. And for those who have save desks, retention desks, high volume transaction, you're grinding through it, why not? There's evidence that shows this actually works pretty well. But for all the other things that we do as customer success, it's not a fit. What Ryan and DC say in their book, it's a terrific book, say although tangible rewards, for example pay, can undermine intrinsic and autonomous extrinsic motivation because the rewards are often experienced as controlling, pay and rewards may also support motivation and engagement if they are structured so as not to thwart satisfaction of the autonomy and competence. So in other words, if we go after those intrinsic rewards, if we use our pay and our compensation systems to drive more intrinsic behavior, then we're going to be more successful. They do this when they're used to affirm and recognize people's competence, are administered in an autonomy-supportive way, and communicate the value of various efforts and accomplishments. So they're saying it's not necessarily bad that you give reward and recognition and bonuses and things like that to people. That's good. But how do you do it makes a big difference. So how do they say to do it? This. Collaborate on goal setting. Don't just hand people a number. This is what your expectation is. Link the goals to a greater purpose. Why are we doing this? Make goals optimally challenging. If they're too hard, they're demotivating. If they're too easy, they're demotivating. Provide direction, but allow choices in the approach to meeting the goal. So don't just say you have to do it exactly this way. Be creative. Find another way of doing that. People have autonomy and choice when they do that. They have competence. Provide informational, not controlling feedback. So if we're going to do incentive programs, if we're going to get the best out of our people, it's not through pay for performance for most of what a CSM does. Now, if you're doing the high transactional stuff, fine, pay for performance. But if you really want to optimize performance, you got to do stuff like this. What does this also look like to you? Where have you seen this before? It's good leadership, isn't it? A good leader does all this stuff. You get people to engage in this process. It's not rewards and punishments. It's not carrots and sticks. You get the best out of people. They engage. They're creative. They like doing what they're doing. It's not about the money. It's about the behavior that you're trying to get from people, right? So I guess at the end of the day, the one thing I just want to point out is that let's not get fixated on these carrots and sticks, these incentive plans. There's a place for that. There are certain kinds of work with it that pays off very well, and the evidence is very clear. But think about all the stuff we do as CSMs. That, this whole dynamic. We've got to think about some new ways of getting the most out of our people. And it's not about bonuses and compensation and quotas and commissions and none of that stuff. What are your reactions to this?
Well, there was a thing on LinkedIn, I don't know who was commenting on it earlier in the week, that really it's about the person you hire too. What are they wired to do as far as the integrity and having done a lot of sales in my career, some of that stuff you have peers next to you that they are absolutely driven by the things they're incented to do, and then there's other people that have the path that they want to go down because they believe it's the right thing from an integrity standpoint for them to do. And so I think that, I don't know if you were commenting on it or Ryan was commenting on it, but it was in the last few days on LinkedIn of, do you have the right people in the job to be able to do that role for a CSM?
With the right set of motivations.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this too in this way, and in a systems, you brought this up, but in a systems approach, when you're in an ecosystem of a company, you are in a system, and there's definitely, like in a system, there's points of leverage, and if one is the highest point of leverage and you move down to 10 being the lowest, moving the people around per your graph and the exercise activity that was done, that's one of the faucets that has the least leverage.
Yeah.
And so, given that as a truth, if you want to say, then if you move up the system to feedback loops and balancing loops and other faucets that have more leverage, those also imply more time, higher level
Yes.
of like sponsorship,
There's a trade-off.
which also means, again, like the magic question I'm thinking about in all of this is waiting for the slide that's going to go, and this is how we do it. But I mean, I'm being silly, but still to the point of that's the hardest part, is moving the system's executive sponsors to start thinking more where the leverage is the highest. And when they're looking at a graph like that, per what everybody thought in this room was, oh yeah, that's just easy. Let's move Jordan out. Sorry, Jordan. Because that's the like a business that has highly transactional kind of experiences. That's fast. It's easy. Let's do it. Move Jordan out. Move Tanya in. But that's not a sustainable. It doesn't work. So how do you move executive sponsors farther to the place in the system where there's more leverage when it's going to take 6, 12, 18 months to make a difference, because you're not just pulling one human out and putting another one in.
Yeah, I mean, and we're motivated to take the quick win, right? I mean, the renewals desk, the save desk, 10 to 15% effective, but man, you can ring the bell when that happens, and people say, oh yeah, see that we're making a difference here. The hard stuff is going after the systemic issues. That's very, very hard, but they give you the best results, right? And they're sustainable. Other thoughts?
One of the things that I've done, and I started building a new success organization back in January, is focused on not necessarily the retention number, but the one of the things that we did a horrible job of was engaging with our customers. So it was really focused on proactive engagement and the activities that they're doing with their customers versus the net number of did they churn or not. Because we weren't even, there were customers that we hadn't even talked to for years. And now it's, let's get in there, understand them, start building the relationships, understanding what their success criteria are, determining, assessing the health of that customer. So focused on those types of metrics that they have much more influence and control over versus, like you said, the net, what's the net retention number?
Exactly. So focus on the behaviors. What can you do? What is this within your circle of influence that you can change? And if we believe it, if we believe that contact and that understanding, it will pay off and does produce value, we're going to see the results, right?
That's kind of, exactly the way I looked at that.
I was last week at Startup Week. I heard a talk on getting high-performing sales teams. They touched on a lot of the similar topics: intrinsic, extrinsic, and altruistic. They used altruism instead of autonomy. But one of the things they were saying is giving the people that are coming onto your team that option for which one fits them, and understanding that person before they actually enter your team, to giving them the option of what area is going to fit them better. So are they going to respond better? Is their motivation going to be more money and earning that money, or is it going to be more of a steady income and less reward?
And we all have both. We all have intrinsic and extrinsic, and it's always a question of mix. And in fact, there's developmental questions about that too. The happiest times in your life, any thoughts about one of the two ages when you're the happiest in your life?
8.
5, 7 to 9, and my age. Seriously, in the 50s, they've actually plotted happiness over life. You peak at 9 because it's cool. You play around a whole lot. High school,
Junior high.
you drop.
Junior high.
High school, and then you're not happy in your 20s. But as soon as you get the kids out of the house, it starts going up again. And why is that? Because you're not extrinsic anymore. You don't give a crap about the house, right? You're done. What satisfies me? What makes me happy, right?
Oh God,
so we should.
Let's get the kids out of the house.
No, it's really true. And we're all at different stages, right? And we're all different. There's cultural and developmental. People will respond differently, and that's okay. It's okay. And it will shift over a lifetime. But that is very true. People are different. They're on different parts of the motivation question. How are we doing on time? 7:40. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? How would you structure something that looks like this? What would you do? What are some alternatives rather than just a commission and quota and a Sure.
So one thing that came to mind when David was answering was lagging and leading indicators of performance. So measuring time to first value, something that we're trying to do, and we haven't structured a incentive plan around it, but we're looking at it carefully, and we're comparing peers to peers and segments to segments based upon that metric, a leading indicator of time.
Well, not this, right? A lot of factors in here. That's where it gets problematic. But, this may be something where you say, well, what is it that you can do? What can you contribute? Going back to making it challenging, asking them for how would you solve that, right? Getting them to participate in this, provide direction, but allow choices, and say, what can you do to influence that? And then recognize and reward it. And you can do that with pay. That's okay. Because you get the best of both worlds in that, as opposed to the carrot and the stick, right? And paying only on the outcome, paying only on the results.
How do you do that? How do you recognize what is influence? Is it when someone performs outside the standard deviation?
Well, that's a great question. And mathematically speaking, back to our standard normal, right? If you have someone out here or out here, you're statistical outliers. Let's say this is positive and this is negative. If they're blowing it off the map in the results, you got to go figure out what they're doing, because they're doing something different than everybody else. More than 2 standard deviations away. On the other hand, if they are they're not showing up at all, you got to investigate that too, right? Because there's something special going on. Everybody else, random. Other factors are determining that. I did a study. I used to work at a call center years ago. Thousands and thousands of calls a day. Extremely data-rich environment. One of the things we looked at was what is the contribution of an individual agent. Obviously, when you're on the phone, that's a manual process. People are involved in all of this. But we saw these performance differences too, and managers had incentive programs and rewards and recognition and stuff like that. Guess how much you could attribute to individual differences between this agent and that agent. You can explain the performance in the differences between the people. What percentage do you think that was?
5%?
6%. 94% was other factors in the system. 94%. So where did the managers spend their time?
6%.
On the 6%, the managing the people and the incentives and manipulating and motivating. And why weren't they spending time on the other 94? Right? Going after this, the other factors. Why is the customer calling? Why do they have that problem over and over and over again? Why are the policies making this so long for us to answer this question? Why is this so big? Go after the process. What Deming says is you lead people and you improve process. You do not manage people. You lead people. And you continually improve the system. You go after this. Unless you have these things happening, then you got a problem. Then you got to figure that out. Other thoughts about how you can implement that?
I think what I find is that most executive teams, and we work with some of the same executive teams, they or investors are looking at a metrics-driven organization.
Yeah.
That is like, you need to be a metrics-driven organization. And I find it's okay if you're a leader, a VP, a director, to be held towards the metrics.
Yep.
But what I find, it's very hard, as
David
was saying, it's very hard to keep the team motivated unless they can feel like their actions, and so what I try to do is suggest that directors, managers, they get measured by the higher statistics. Because again, they're not doing the daily job of managing the customer.
Yeah.
So they have to be held accountable to the metrics, the bigger metrics. And then the team, what they are measured on the activities. Mm-hmm. And it's not just how many activities, there's a mix to that, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But it's something that they can feel like, if they do, and you have to come up with a set of activities that you think is going to create the result. but you can't always measure them on the result. It's not like sales.
Right.
It's not like sales that there's so many transactions and you
Volume.
just
It's
you
a numbers
sell it.
game.
You,
Yeah. Just keep
it
going.
really is about doing the on-site visits. It's the executive reviews.
Absolutely.
It's how many contacts do you have at an organization. It's all of those things. If all of those things happen, then the numbers should work out. But if you keep holding them to the numbers, it's too ambiguous. It's too ambiguous to hold the individual to the numbers. I don't know. That's what I'm coming to, is that, I'm still trying to make sense of it. And I've been doing this for a long time. I consult on it, like all of that stuff. And it really is, there's all of these individuals that's like, are you metrics driven? Like, what are the metrics, and are you meeting your metrics, and how much did you increase churn, reduce churn? All of those things, and it's just so much more complicated than that. It is really about the activities. It's about not just the activities. It's about the I'm maybe not saying this that
No,
way.
I think you're saying it really well.
Yeah,
And I
think so.
agree. So I have a fairly new customer success organization that we stood up, and we're still trying to figure things out. Like, what metrics are we even tracking? But that's what I'm all about right now, is what are the activities that people are doing, and I want to track the heck out of them because I don't know what works yet.
Right.
And so to me, it's super valuable to focus on activities so that then we can see what the metrics are. And
Positive effect.
yeah, it's like, does that make a difference or does it not make a difference?
Yep.
So
Right, and more mature organizations, I think, can hold people accountable even for your book of business and all of that kind of stuff to that, to the success manager, down to percentage of churn or retention or growth. But I think it's really hard sometimes to do that with a team and keep them motivated. Because how do you keep them motivated if they feel like, churn zero? You know what I mean? If their job is retention and zero retention, you're never going to have zero retention. So how do you keep them motivated to?
And we're back to what is a manager's job? Lead people, improve process. If you do those two, if you improve the process, you're going to take the red beads out of there, right?
Yeah.
You've improved the system, you're going to get better results on average because you changed the system. But individual contributors can't do that. They're not empowered to do that.
Just to amplify some points here. I mean, measuring the manager and the result, the employee and the activity, I think is a light bulb moment for me. And I'm really glad that, Amy, you liked the way you did. I'm starting to see my role as a manager now to root out those things on the board. Those are variables with betas. Two of them CSMs can control, but the rest of them I can go influence.
Yes.
I can go over to
Yes.
sales and say, you're pricing wrong. Here's the data from the customers, right? And kind of do a root cause analysis to influence the rest of the variables.
Right, but the CSM can't do it. You
No.
have to do
You
it
have
as a leader.
But the activities that the CSM does identifies them.
Yes, yes.
That then you create initiatives around how do we change customer fit or sales process so that you're selling to the right customer.
But also, you can't treat every activity the same. So you can say, hey, you reach 10 activities, you get your bonus, right? So I feel like the key is also weighting in the specific set of activities, right? So on-site, you get 20% of your
absolutely.
total commission structure.
Your variable,
right?
Yeah.
Versus phone call, you get a smaller weighted.
I started out where it was kind of blanket type of engagement and tracking whether it in-person, executive business review on the phone, or email status. And finally, I'm like, team, emails have a purpose, but to me, that's not a meaningful interaction. That's a true two-way conversation. Now that means, and we switched it to electronic because some of my CSMs and our customer base, they're actually doing texting on business reviews and things like that, which to me is, I'm not bought in on the effectiveness of it, but it's really to your point. I mean, there's different weights of if you're in front of a person going through the results, you're reading that person's response, you're getting well connected within the organization. That brings a ton more value than sending an email saying, "Hey, are you healthy this month?" And what can I put you down on a score of 1 to 5? That to me is not value.
Right, and
But some people think it is.
And when we talk about activities, I don't necessarily mean phone calls. I mean, you for each referral that you send to sales for an upsell, you get a spiff of X amount of dollars. It incents those right behaviors, so it's not necessarily how many activities, it's the value of the activities, like you said. So some of it is just normal. Yeah.
And you actually bring up an excellent point about, because that's one of the other variables I look at and measure on is number. I actually do number of customer success qualified leads, which is something that was alien to my org or my company. It's not to go sell it, no, it's to identify the opportunity and get it into sales, because that takes that conflict between sales and CSM.
Church and state.
Yeah.
Exactly. You had something?
Yeah, one of the things that we did to help get buy-in across the organization on these reasons of churn is engage product, marketing, sales, engineering, whoever I could corral in a churn retro and identify these specific reasons for churn so that product could hear, we had this issue, we had this, we had difficulty conveying ROI, so engaging with product marketing to get us better materials, and you kind of need that. So that was one way that we were able to look at this, and it also, by having the CSMs engaged in that meeting, they realized, hey, we're not in this alone. The whole organization is bought into addressing, and we don't even really have churn. It was just a best practice. But they didn't feel like this is all on us. It was like, all these different groups are here to help us and be a part of this solution.
That's right. Churn is an enterprise-wide issue. It's not CSM. Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
We actually looked at, you had the logistic and linear regression models there. There's a different model type. We tried to explain the variance in churn, and we're able to build models to get us to explain about 90% of the variance, excluding the CSM stuff. And pretty much none of the factors were really within the CSM's control.
Yeah.
The 10% wasn't even clear to me that 10% was, because there were a lot of correlated variables. Like, since we did stuff regionally, the salespeople tended to sell accounts that went to the same CSM, so you couldn't untangle, who was doing the sales and stuff. Which I think is just bolstering your point, which is almost none of us in the CSM's control focus on the inputs, not the outputs.
Right, exactly.
Can I ask a question? How do you then turn that around to, if we say the CSM, because again, there's the flip side, if the CSM is not in control, how do we provide value? How do we show the ROI?
Well, it goes back to, quantifying this, right? I like the idea of, you can break down the churn causes, and you will see those common themes, and you can quantify that and say, look, guys, we do this, we can do this piece, we can do this piece. These are the things that we can do. Let's focus on that. You guys own these other things, right? But then we're back to the individual contributors. What can you influence? What can you do? And how can you do that? And help us do a better job at that. Now they're bought in, now they're engaged, now they have autonomy, now they have competence. They're contributing to it, they're part of the solution, right? So this Covey stuff, really, it's good to go back and reread that. Bill, we probably need to wrap up here pretty soon.
Well, excuse me, just one thought. I've seen companies that have had a lot of success with their enterprise or strategic customers when the CSMs are doing business reviews to invite the product people. They know there's some issues. Invite the product people, invite the marketing, to see and hear from the customer exactly what the problem is.
Yeah, firsthand.
Yeah.
Firsthand. Yeah. Nobody, it's when you sit them down in front of a real customer, a living, breathing customer, in their words, and they tell what's going on, the light bulbs go off, for sure. Yeah. I think that's about it. Thank you all for being here. Next month.